different patterns. Not necessarily. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be one and the other. It clearly is about two partners seeing each other as equals, because both of them are two individuals. They are two individuals who are in one sense unique. But these unique individuals are made together, made individually in God's image. Each is made in the image of God. And each is therefore, in that sense, an image bearer of God, whether male or female, husband or wife. And yet, these two actually now become one. To be united is for two to become one. So it is not 1 plus 1 becoming 2. It's almost like 1 into 1 staying as 1. And they have different traits. Whether they are complementary or not, they might have different traits. And sometimes their traits may not necessarily be complementary. They might be very similar traits. Both might be very similar in the way they look at life. They may be very similar in their personalities itself. They both might be choleric. But irrespective of that, the point is that they are able to be the best of friends. They are able to ultimately enjoy intimacy. They are able to respect each other, and they're able to work together on their marriage and doing things together. So marriage really ultimately is all about doing things together.
Any other question? You are welcome to unmute and ask, put it on the chat, or you can send it directly to the speaker or to me, and it will be considered anonymous. What are the methods to have better communication when the other partner is at a lower level of understanding?
I'm not sure what you mean by a lower level of understanding. If it is lower level of intellectual understanding or spiritual understanding or lower emotional understanding, you can clarify if you want in the chat box. But see, with intellectual, yeah, see, which is why ideally one should really marry somebody who is of your own intellectual caliber. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. When you marry someone, you're looking for somebody with whom you can communicate. It doesn't really make much sense for a person who is very intellectual, say a PhD or whatever, to marry somebody who is, maybe 10th or 12th pass. So there's a lot of intellectual gap there. There is going to be a problem there. So that would probably be avoided by looking for intellectual compatibility. It's not about degrees, but it's about the ability to communicate and understand each other well. So prevention is better than cure here. But suppose you are married to somebody who is not of your intellectual caliber, then I think what would be important is to try and find some areas where you can communicate at the same level. There's always some area where each person has a lot of interest and passion. For instance, one person may be a PhD in science and the other person may have very little understanding of science, but they may be very clever in maybe arts or crafts or handicrafts or something like that. They may be very good at sports. So there may be some other level at which, some other area in which they are very smart and very capable. So I guess the important thing is for both to try to take interest in each other's activities and each other's talents and each other's areas, so that you're at least able to share to some extent, to share interests and share goals, and taking interest in the other partner's goals and praying with them about it, and all that comes into it is the way to go. Right. So also learn to be able to speak your truth in a simpler way. You don't always, for instance, if you are a PhD scientist, you should be able to speak about your subject in a simple way so that your partner is able to understand and appreciate what you're doing. If you speak only in academic terms, which only academics can understand, then obviously there will be no communication. So communication has to also be at the other person's level. All right.
Yeah. So, like Jesus spoke heavenly subjects in parables.
Yes, true. Good example, Abhijit.
So it's like the speed of trust is one of the ways in which you develop healthy relationships, even within very, very different groups, very diverse groups. So yes, so ultimately you have to come to the level of the other, so that you can, and at some point the levels will, get closer and closer to each other. And that is why shared interest is important. Is it okay to have second thoughts after a proposal and before marriage and cancel it if it doesn't seem to work out? Yeah, I think that is why one must be able to think hard and before deciding about marriage. The marriage is not to be entered into lightly, without thought, without consideration.
Which is part of the wedding service.
And it is very much part of the whole run-up to the wedding itself. And that is why it's very important to think, reflect, take advice on it. And if one has to say no, it's best to say no before the wedding, obviously, rather than after you're married.
Yeah.
Because it is one relationship. Ultimately you can change jobs, you can, change cities, but changing a spouse is not like changing your shirt.
But at the same time, it shouldn't be for a frivolous reason. For instance, it should not be because the partner happens to be a little maybe plumper than you like, or darker than you like, or didn't have as much money as you thought. It shouldn't be for silly, frivolous reasons. But if there is a problem in communication, or if there's a problem in your worldview, your Christian worldview, or anything like that, then sure, it's better to say no before the marriage.
So I think there are people who worry about the disgrace part of it because there's been a formal engagement, but it is much better for them to face it than to be in a difficult marriage. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Madam, one question.
Yes.
My son is not actually Christian marriage, actually Hindu marriage only, but 3 months only over. The same problem what you have said, it is going on. Both are like competitive only. Like everything, she's expecting everything like equal rights, like that. Even my son is worrying, like I have done a mistake and he's blaming me. So I told today this program you can watch so that it will help for you. But I think he didn't watch. So I am only watching this one of our, because I believe Jesus and I am a converted actually. I am a Christ, I accepted and I am following the Jesus principle. But he has not followed and he has got married in Hindu only. So same way it is going on. The problem is what he said, 3 months only over. He said, I don't want this girl like that. I told you should not take decision like that. So wait. So same like competition. She is different background. Okay, both are different. Both are working, and she's not cooking. But cook we kept okay. Everything that she's telling, I told everything before. But he also agreed something that time. But now it is some understanding should be there. That is also not this every day. What you said rightly earlier, marriage things also is coming to part of that, and again work and money. What they said, they're not given. So whether it is true or they cheated like that, he's feeling. So sometimes he's blaming me also. You could have stopped. But he has not listened to my thing also, advice. I know that. But I don't know what way I can help for him.
Yeah, well, I guess you must continue to pray for him as you are. And I think you should suggest that they both go and see a marriage counselor and try to work it out. Because you can tell him that it's very easy to break it off, but at least give it a shot, try, see whether some kind of third-party intervention counseling can help you to work through your differences. Because if you get married again, the same thing may happen if you are not prepared to know. No? Yeah.
Okay. But can you give your numbers? This can suppose if you want, you can consult.
Abhijit will put it up in the end. Our numbers. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah, what is your stance about dowry? I mean, I think at this point in time, with the anti-dowry laws being in place for so many years.
No, sir. So we didn't ask dowry and all. They said something they're going to put gold, but
no. There's a question.
Okay, sorry.
Question. Yeah.
Madam, there's another question. What is Christian cultures considering our Indian culture?
In Christian circles, considering our Indian culture. Yeah, so like I said, with the anti-dowry laws now being in place for several decades, asking for dowry, taking dowry is a crime. Okay. And certainly being criminals is not what is expected. And certainly being criminals is not what of Christians. And so taking dowry, giving dowry, are all crimes under Indian seeking law. Dowry are all crimes under Indian law. And I don't think that irrespective of who we are and what our culture has been, I think as Christian
about
disciples,
dowry.
there's no two ways about it.
I
About
think
dowry.
there is two audios that we are getting. Two audios we are getting mixed up.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah,
Can you hear us now?
yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, we were saying that Christian, yeah.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that, with the anti-dowry laws being in place for so many decades, I think there should be no confusion about the fact that ultimately taking dowry, giving dowry, demanding dowry is a crime under Indian law, under Indian legislation. And Christians are not exempt from this law, uh, irrespective of what our Christian backgrounds are. So I think this is something that we must well understand, and therefore it again is a reflection of our attitude towards money. And what the Lord wants from us is for people who will, but people give and accept dowry as normal convention. Just remember that they are all lawbreakers. And is that something that we will endorse? I mean, certainly we can't endorse as disciples of Jesus. And so I think we'll have to find our ways to deal with the issue. Yeah, so many of us do come from cultures where taking and giving dowry is normal. But the point is ultimately, some would say that dowry is protection for the girl, it safeguards the girl. No, ultimately, it's also about the fact that, in inheritance laws, we are seeing far more of the older attitudes change, and increasingly in succession and in inheritance, the inheritance is shared equally between all the children, whether they are men or women, boys or girls. And so the old reasons for them have all changed and are not anymore there.
The old reasons to give dowry.
The old reasons to give dowry. If you look at the biblical culture, in the biblical culture, it was actually different. The men actually had to pay the dowry. There was a bride price being paid. Okay. And there are some cultures even today where bride prices are paid. For instance, among the Muslims, it's very common to have a bride price being paid. The point is that ultimately, as disciples, this is not really important for us. And I think this whole focus on dowry and focus on material things is also a reflection of our own attitude to wealth. And I think that is why we should have a lot more teaching on wealth, that wealth is not an entitlement. Wealth is something that God gives us. God gives us material resources and possessions so that we don't just selfishly use it for ourselves, but that we are able to use it in a greater part. But yes, for meeting some of our essential needs, obviously, but ultimately for meeting God's greater concerns for our world. And I think that's the purpose of a lot of that, of wealth and money. And I think having that understanding would actually make all these issues about dowry and inheritance and succession and all that stuff actually will recede into insignificance once you have the right teaching, the right understanding of how we need to view money, wealth, and physical and material resources.
Just a related doubt to this: wouldn't it be then also left to the individual to be willing to be marrying outside the culture, because they do insist marrying within the culture and they still expect somebody to not ask for dowry, so they want to be in the safe place, safe haven, and in the same community, but they are unwilling to go outside. I mean, marry somebody from another culture if they don't want dowry. So shouldn't they be up for that challenge then? Just asking, thinking out loud. I think we've lost the audio now. Are you shifting to another gadget? That's Dr. Jamila Koshi's number for
Yeah,
those.
well,
Yeah.
outside the community is, how can I teach a spouse who's not willing to cook food at home? She always looks for alternatives. Yes. See, the thing is that nowadays, with the kind of work schedules that people have in most of the major cities, and with the kind of timings that people have, and the kind of stress that people have on the job, to expect that a young wife who's also a working woman should be cooking food at home, that is probably
An unrealistic.
Okay, So I would suggest that both the couple, the husband and wife, together figure out how they manage the cooking food. That's what most couples do. To go by the old traditional way that the woman has to do the cooking and taking care of the house when she's also working outside the home or whatever is probably very unreasonable, and it's going to lead to stress in the marriage. So teaching the spouse to cook food at home is probably not the issue. The issue probably would be that the couple should decide together how they are going to manage their food. If they one person wants to cook one day, or they want to just have a simple meal outside one day, or they're going to hire a cook, or whatever it is, the couple has to figure that out, okay, and decide it together. But just don't go by the old thing that the wife has to be cooking food every day. That may not work if she's a working woman.
And many of these role allocations are all cultural. There's nothing biblical about the fact that it's only the woman who has to cook, or the man who has to cook. I mean, it changes also from time to time. For the last 6 years, for instance, I've been working from home. And so I have ended up doing a lot of the cooking than at the time when I used to be traveling outside for work. And I think it doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. But the way we have both looked at this whole area of cooking, and ultimately life is much more than food we eat, right? But though food is very important for many of us. We've always found that cooking together, doing things together, gives us time together, even in the middle of our busy lives. Just doing it together actually is much better. And every once in a while, ordering from out to make sure that if you're tired, is perfectly all right.
So figure that out.
Figure
Okay?
that out.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question here. Someone has said that there is one girl who I was talking on WhatsApp. I had shared live. She had shared her things, but next day she stopped messaging. After that, I've tried messaging, but no reply. What is the meaning of that? The girl is a believer. Yeah. See, the thing is that as we make relationships and friendships with people of the other sex, and as we are trying to find the person with whom we spend our life, particularly if you're doing this on your own without parental support or without any sort of system to doing it, it's possible that there will be a lot of starts and stops. It's possible that one or the other may back out for whatever reason. We don't know why it is. No, it may be that the parents came to know and they said you are not to talk to this boy anymore. That may be the reason. It may be that this girl herself realized that, okay, you're from a different community, it will not work. She may have realized that no, I need to get my job in place first, because I need to have a job, and then I want to think of there could be 1,000 reasons why she has backed off. Okay, so we do not understand. But again, like we said, just like there has to be consent in any kind of physical intimacy, similarly there has to be a mutual consent in taking a relationship forward. And if one or the other backs off, the other should accept it with grace. Okay, don't worry about it. God will bring the right person to you. You need to respect the other person's choice, even if it is to say no. Okay, because remember that even the prodigal son, he went away from home, right? And the father had the grace to let him go. He was waiting for him to come back, but he very graciously allowed him to go. That's what the parable said, right? Okay, so just take this with grace and try and understand why, perhaps, but otherwise let it go. Give her the freedom to choose whatever she wants.
Right. Thank you. Any other question? You are free to unmute and ask, or put it on the chat. You can also ask it anonymously by sending it to me or to a speaker.
Video on again. No.
Yeah, any question?
Switch it off and then it becomes unstable.
Yeah. So it has been found that certain things that happen very early on in marriage, for example, a husband goes abroad right after marriage, and then he doesn't call as much, check on as much, and that desertion in the initial years of marriage can affect the spouse in a very in a heartbreaking way, that the shadow of which remains very much in those years, and it troubles them even now. So how can they begin to address something that happened, a crack that appeared much early in marriage? How can they begin to address and talk about it, because that is still affecting their lives? So any light on that matter, things like that? Or maybe the in-law said something and that time the husband did not stand, or that kind of thing, which is deeply affected them.
Yeah, well, the thing is that one person going abroad to from should have been a joint decision. A joint decision
The audio, I'm not sure the audio is working again or not.
is the problem. And the couple, the person who was to talk, to sort it and how we can avoid making such decisions, unilateral decisions in because
The audio is again breaking.
you accusate way, because if it is said in an accusatory way, that you left me and went off, you deserted me, you don't love me. It's put these words, the other person may feel very threatened, and they may also respond with a lot of hostility. So it should be said in a very gentle and tactful way. You'd probably have to use we sentences and I sentences. Put it like this: that look, I did feel hurt that you took that decision without involving me, and I would be very happy if you would explain why that happened. And maybe I will understand, maybe I will be able to come to terms with it if you explain it to me. And I would really be happy if in future we take these decisions together. So if you put it like that, the other person may feel comfortable enough to share why they went. Perhaps there was a money issue, perhaps there was something, we don't know why the reason was, no? So talking about it is important, but the way it is said is equally important. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah, irrespective of what the specific context is, it would always be ideal if the two of them are living together in the same place.
Right.
It's only as an exception and only in certain very, very rare circumstances one should live apart. And if that is done, it should be with both parties agreeing. That's really what is important. And just to save money, sometimes the reasons why people stay separately are to save more money, and that cannot be the reason. So you should try and find a way, even if it's going abroad, whether you can get a visa for the spouse, for the family. I think, and irrespective of how much it costs, I mean, you have to ultimately say what is more important. If one were to put a value on the marriage relationships, on the relationship, on the relationship between husband and wife, is that more important than except the relationship with God on every other human relationship or aspect of living? Is it more important than money? Is it more important than the things that we possess? I mean, that's a question that we need to keep asking. So that is where priorities are important. For many people, it's God, it's spouse, it's family, and only after that is work and money and other things.
Right. I think
There's a question here: if the spouse's family takes every decision in our married life, how to address that issue? Okay, similar to the thing we talked about earlier, how to communicate, no? I think it would be important to sit down together and just tell them that, look, if we were to follow the Bible, and we are Christians, we want to follow what the Bible says, then the Bible does say the things like, the husband will leave his father and mother, and we will have our own family, we'll be united as one. So the point is that we have our own, we are supposed to be united, and we have to take the decisions about our life and our work and our children and all that. So if your family is taking the decisions, we need to figure out why this is and how to change this so that we can become better as a couple. So if it is said in these terms, the spouse may be willing to listen. But if we say it that your parents always take the decisions, your parents are interfering in our lives, I'm fed up of this. If this is how we put it, then the spouse is going to react with hostility, and the spouse is going to react with defensiveness, and the conversation may not move forward. So a lot of the time, it's how we put it that works. Okay, so it's very important to communicate in a very gentle and in a very non-accusatory and in a loving way. Okay, if it is said this way and still the spouse doesn't listen, then you may have to say that, look, we need to take this to somebody else. Perhaps we need to go for counseling for this, because this is not, this is making us both unhappy. let's go to somebody and talk about it. Perhaps it's my fault. I want to know how I can change. So if you put it like this, the other person may talk.
Okay, right. Any other question, friends? Anybody has more to ask here? Uh,
Okay.
Now, there are differences that can be worked out through counseling or through care, but then there are sometimes certain things that erupt in a marriage that are just terrible. It's devastating for the spouse, that is for the marriage, for the person who's married. So, are there is there a place of I mean, you go through counseling because there was a case in which a person turned out to be mentally really having some mental issues which the family had hidden, and often there are also cases where the spouse is just completely unreasonable or toxic, so uh, should there be a place, a time, a deadline to work it out and then take a decision rather than dwell in that same marriage for life, and be struggling throughout? I mean, there was a case that I heard in where the wife was just overtly suspicious and possessive. Whether there was something like that, we don't know. But the husband did not want to divorce his wife. She had a hot temper and all of that, and he believed in the sanctity of marriage, but they just never worked out. It just never worked out. Till this day, they are separated and nothing has happened. So, can you shed some light on such such unfortunate unions here?
Yeah. See, as a psychiatrist, I see this very frequently, that many people hide their psychiatric illnesses before they get married. And
Right,
after they get married, the poor spouse has to deal with a whole lot of issues which they didn't expect.
right,
So it is pretty unreasonable for Christians to do this, and I don't think it's a good thing at all. Uh, However, sometimes it's a new problem which comes up. Okay, it's not something which was pre-existing. It's a, as you said, a devastating blow which just comes like a bolt from the blue. A mental illness can happen to anybody. If that happens, definitely we must see this as something which God has allowed in our lives, right? If it was a physical illness, you take it, right? So similarly, if it's a mental illness, you may need to realize that God has allowed this to happen, and I promise to take this person for better or for worse in illness and sickness and in health. So I need to help this person to get over this problem. So most mental illnesses can be treated. So that's the other issue. If a person is paranoid, for instance, suspicious of their spouse's infidelity, that is a problem which can be treated. The problem is nobody comes for treatment. Okay. So if we are, and I want to use all these avenues to encourage people to go and get treated for these things. Mental illness can be treated. You should treat it. You can have illnesses in any part of your body. Why not the brain? The brain also develops illnesses. So if your spouse gets mentally ill, just get them treated rather than struggling for years because there is some objection to going to a doctor. Okay. So aside from that treatment, even if they continue to have problems, suppose they don't take the medicine or they refuse to come or whatever it is, well, there are different ways of handling it. Sometimes, yes, the marriage does break up because there is violence or whatever. Many couples do stay together. Okay, so this is not an easy situation. It's a very difficult situation, and our hearts go out to those who are in this position. But again, if the spouse has got an illness, our first reaction should be to try and help them out of it. Okay? Whether or not the marriage lasts, as Christians, our duty is to try and help the other person to come out of it.
And whether it's a physical illness or a mental illness,
Yeah.
ultimately none of us can be guaranteed with having good health all our lives, isn't it? And as we get older, we have different forms and different kinds of illnesses. So I think there is that ability to be committed to each other for a lifetime, which is what marriage is all about.
True.
Apart from mental illnesses, there are also personality disorders which happen. No, you might not have expected that the person that you marry will be this kind of person. Perhaps they are narcissistic. Perhaps they are, obsessive. They are finicky about cleanliness. There may be all sorts of issues which are actually really difficult to live with. But still, if we are married, we have promised to be with them for better or for worse, in sickness and in health. So it is something which we have to deal with the Lord and find our peace and try to do our best to help that person to come out of it. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So I think in one of the last lecture, Dr. Jamila, in divorce and remarriage, you had explained those 5 compartments of Titanic very well. And those can be a very good reference point for anybody who would want to
Yes.
look at that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that. That's why there's no guarantee that the marriage will survive. The marriage may not survive if there are all these issues.
Right.
But our job is to try to keep it afloat as far as possible. Okay, to not seek to break it up unless.
Right. Yeah. So if there are no more questions, I think we can close the meeting. Right. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Jamila and Brother Cherin, for this really wonderful session. And thank you, everyone, all of you who participated and patiently, went stuck with us till the end, even though there was some internet problem. But thank you so much. The talk and the Q&A itself is very, very meaningful and a blessing. We hope this helps people in some ways who are seeking help or direction. We hope this video and the Q&A both helps people who are looking for some answers for the questions, for the confusion that they are in. God bless you all. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you so much.